Welcome to Intersect, where church meets culture. I'm Josh Desch, the lead pastor at Northeast Presbyterian Church in lovely Columbia, South Carolina, the capital of the Palmetto State. And I am joined, as always, by my non-gambling wife, Betsy.
Hi. Hi, everybody. Non-gambling. That is true.
Non-gambling wife,
Yes.
Betsy.
Yes.
Unless you're gambling and I don't know.
Right. Well,
In which case, don't tell me. Today's episode of Intersect is a provocative title. Here it is. Sports gambling will kill us all.
I like it.
That's it. Sports gambling will kill us all.
Period.
That's it. Period. Full stop. We're talking about the rise of sports gambling.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is crazy.
We'll tell 1% of the story, and we're going to tell you a lot. Bets, you're going to start out by sharing some personal anecdotes of stories we've read about how sports gambling has impacted real people. Give us some examples.
Yes. Well, I'm sure that everybody's heard about gambling gone sideways, and used to, you had to gamble in a casino, and, this was adults. But increasingly, as gambling has moved onto smartphones, it's just exploded and gone completely crazy. So there was a story that Josh and I read a couple of years ago, I guess, from The Athletic. But you also printed this story out and you brought it home and you made our kids read it.
Yes.
Yeah. So they are thankfully passionate about not sports gambling at this point, and we hope it remains that way.
Better stay that way.
Yeah, but we can link this article in the show notes. But this is about a guy named Jordan Holt who started gambling, as many others do. He was watching a Pacer game, and he may have already had a habit at this point, but as most people do, just started very small.
I think that he had a history of casino gambling.
Okay.
Not sports, not phone. Anyway.
Well, started very small, small bets, small amounts of money. And as gambling goes, it just snowballed more and more. He had the habit from his wife, took out loans in different ways to cover the gambling debts. When it was all said and done, he was in the hole for, I think, $110,000. Is that right?
Yes.
Something like that. His wife didn't know the whole time that this was happening. And then at some point she did become aware, but I think he started again in a different way behind her back.
Yeah, he started lying to her.
Yes. And almost led, at the end of the article, you're not sure if they're going to stay together.
No.
It would be good if there was an update, but she felt so betrayed that he had hid this habit and had really hurt their financial future. But the last line of the article is really good. Jordan Holt said, "I feel like gambling is my dark passenger. I feel like gambling is always there with me." And it's really a sad story. Really recommend reading that and sharing that with anyone in your life.
We'll put that in the show notes. We'll
Yes.
put that story in the show notes. And I do want to say one of the things that's so convicting, disturbing about the article is he kept taking out loans to feed the habit.
Right.
So he'd get in the hole and then he'd take out a loan because, in his mind, he said, I'm going to get myself out of the hole.
Right.
And he kept, it's not like he had $110,000 to lose.
Exactly. He certainly didn't.
When it ends,
You're not paying bills or something.
No, when it ends, they're in a really tough place that hopefully they're going to get out of. But
you don't really know. We need an update.
A lot of that money, if not almost all that money that he's in the hole for, was money he didn't have.
Right.
Yep.
So that was Jordan Holt, a guy in his 40s. Lest you think this is only a problem for middle-aged people. I read an article this week that says he got hooked on betting at age 11. By college, he gambled 15 hours a day. Underage gambling has become a popular extracurricular activity for high school and middle school kids, sometimes with dangerous consequences. So this article tells the story of a couple different guys. One is named Kurt Freudenberg. I'm just going to read from this article. Kurt Freudenberg was just 11 when he started gambling, trading valuable skins, which are cosmetic upgrades used in video games, for digital currency he could use to bet on gambling sites. Within weeks, the sixth grader was betting thousands of dollars a day on online blackjack and roulette. It felt like a high, an extreme rush, said Freudenberg, who is now 23. I would play soccer and score a goal or get an A on a test. Nothing compared to that high on gambling. By high school, Freudenberg expanded into sports betting on NBA and NFL games and offshore casinos that only accepted cryptocurrency, winning as much as $5,000 on a single bet, which he immediately plowed back into more gambling. If I had a bad day, I'd gamble. If I had a good day, I'd gamble, he said. Gambling was my best friend. The only difference, by high school, all his classmates were doing it too. Freudenberg's parents had no idea what was happening until he went off to college. By then, he was gambling in his dorm room 15 hours a day. He stopped showering, brushing his teeth, or going to class. So that is a pretty dark story of someone who became addicted. And thankfully, this article ends on a hopeful note for Kurt Freudenberg. It said that he went into an inpatient rehab and is now back in college.
Good.
So yeah, that's a great thing. And he said he's been sober for 2 years.
Good.
Yeah. So that's a good story. But we shouldn't think that sports gambling is something that middle-aged people are doing. He got hooked at age 11.
Just unbelievable.
Right. It's crazy.
So
Middle schoolers.
those are some personal examples or real life examples.
Right.
Betsy, let's talk for a few minutes. How did we get here? Because this hasn't been legal that long.
Right.
Right. So what I want to do is I want to tell the story a little bit. I want our audience to get a sense of the scale of this because it's really crazy, the scale of this. And then, of course, at the end, we'll give some thoughts, some advice, and just, some ways that people might want to think about this, might want to approach this. But let's start. The story starts in the year 2018. Of course, now gambling's gone on since humans existed, right? It's always happened.
It's in the Bible.
It's in the Bible. But forever in this country, there had been this law that you couldn't gamble except in Las Vegas, and I think there was a few cutouts in New Jersey. But it was really limited, and it was mostly, it had to be in person. And sports betting, I believe you could do sports betting in person in Vegas or maybe Atlantic City, but it was illegal everywhere else. You
What about Native American reservations?
Oh, I think you could. Well, you could
There were
certainly
some
gamble.
casinos,
I'm not
yeah.
sure if you could sports gamble
Okay.
at the reservations. But again, as you've already said, the game changer in all this is mobile gambling.
Right.
If you still had to drive to a casino, that was going to hit way less people than mobile gambling.
Sure.
Well, anyway, in 2018, the U.S. Supreme Court gives a decision which I think in hindsight was a terrible decision. And I generally like what our Supreme Court does, but I think that this decision was terrible. In Murphy versus NCAA, what the Supreme Court said is the federal government cannot stop states from legalizing gambling. So what the Supreme Court said is states have the right to make their own decisions on gambling in their state. And I want to reference an 80s movie. Remember the movie Ghostbusters?
Yeah.
Right? There's a scene in Ghostbusters where the inspector from New York City comes to the firehouse and he says, I want to inspect your containment system for your ghosts. And Bill Murray and everybody's like, dude, get out of here. And the guy ends up releasing all of the ghosts into New York City. And you just see this 80s graphics, these ghosts flying by the thousands into New York City, terrorizing New Yorkers. That to me is the image that comes to mind with this Supreme Court ruling in 2018. Immediately, an arms race starts between the states. Because you think about it like this. If the Supreme Court has now said that New York can make sports betting legal, and they're going to earn tax revenue off that, well, the states right next to them are going to be, wait a second, you're going to get that money and we're not going to get that money.
Makes sense.
So pretty much instantly, you've got the early adopters were New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Indiana, and Colorado. But within just 3 years, half of all U.S. states had legalized this. Currently, as of today, 38 states plus Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico have some form of sports betting. They've made it legal. Now, some of those states do not allow mobile betting, but most of them do.
So does that mean if your like IP address is in a certain state, you can't sports bet?
I would think so, yes.
Okay.
I would think that's how they regulate it. But prediction markets are a way to go around all this. I'm going to get to prediction markets in a minute. But currently you've got 38 states plus DC and Puerto Rico where you can sports bet. And in the vast majority of those, I think there's only 5 or 6 that you can't do mobile. You have to actually go to a casino. So it is just everywhere now.
Yeah, it is.
And here's some stats. In 2024, 150 billion was wagered on sports.
Wow.
150 billion. That's just America, of course.
And it's not like that's the Super Bowl or the NBA finals. That's like crazy random stuff.
That's ping pong in Indonesia.
Right.
That is
right.
everything.
There is some incredibly random stuff that people bet on.
That's rugby in Australia.
Uh-huh.
That's women's volleyball in Italy.
Yeah.
That's everything.
Uh-huh.
Which
Crazy.
I bet you anything, the addicts, like that kid, I bet he started gambling on stuff he knew nothing about. Because that's what the other guy did too. That's where the addiction leads you. You start gambling on stuff you don't know anything about. 150 billion on sports. Now listen to what the gambling companies made off that. 13 to 14 billion. Now you think, well, okay, at 150, but that's an insane amount of revenue. That's the money they made. So in 2024, Americans lost 13 to 14 billion to the casinos.
Wow.
Now, listen to this. The states, all these states that have legalized it, they made 3 billion in taxes.
Wow.
So the states, again, it became an arms race, and they're thinking, well, I don't want to lose my cut of all this. There's tons of tax dollars to be made. There's probably ways to go around all this stuff, especially if it's a state next to you or something like that. Now, that was 2024. Here's the 2025 stats. Total money wagered up 17 billion, 167 billion.
Wow.
So up 17
In
billion
1
in a year. Revenue up to 17 billion, 2 to 3 billion higher in revenue for the gambling companies.
Wow. In 1 year.
In 1 year.
That's crazy.
Projected the gambling companies to make 33 billion a year in revenue by 2030.
Wow.
Listen to this. DraftKings and FanDuel are what they call a duopoly. Okay? It's not just one. There's 2 companies that basically control everything. The companies are called DraftKings and FanDuel.
Yep.
They control 80% of the U.S. sports gambling market.
Well, and I mean,
These are massive companies.
Our family is obviously we're big NBA fans. We watch a lot of NBA.
Big NBA fans.
You cannot go for 2 commercial breaks without seeing FanDuel or DraftKings.
Oh yeah.
And it's usually it's DraftKings. It's LeBron. It's all the big names that you recognize. And it's so very predatory because here they are, listen, I am a huge LeBron James fan. I always have been. But this really makes me angry because here he is at the top of the world in terms of income, and he is selling a product.
Yep.
That
He's
is
encouraging
so
that
predatory.
11-year-old kid.
That's right. It makes me ill. It really does. And all of these spokespeople they have money coming out their ears. And they don't need any more money, but they take money from the gambling companies to draw in more and more people. It really makes me sick.
By the way, if you really want to sports gamble and you live in one of these states that it's illegal, you can always go on a prediction market like Kalshi and still bet on sports.
Yeah.
I mean, the genie's out of the bottle.
Right.
The ghosts have left the building. There's no putting it back. It's crazy. Now listen to this. I want to talk for a minute about the enormous hypocrisy of the professional sports leagues. And I'm here to tell you, if you're an NBA fan, NFL fan, MLB fan, or college football fan.
NHL?
I don't know about any. I didn't find data on NHL, but they're probably no different. In case you didn't know this, these leagues exist 100% to make money, full stop. That's it. That's all they care about. You might think they care about you as a fan. You might think they care about the purity of the sport. That is just a load of rubbish. They care about making as much money as they can. Before 2018, before the Supreme Court gave the ruling, the leagues like the NFL and the NBA would publicly talk about how gambling threatened the integrity of their sports. So they were on their righteous high horse saying that sports gambling was bad and that it threatened the integrity of their sports. After 2018, they didn't just accept gambling, they partnered with it. Now, these leagues didn't have to do this, but of course, they very quickly recognized that they could make a ton of money by partnering with the major companies. So here's how it works. They partner with DraftKings and FanDuel, and here's how it works. DraftKings or FanDuel pays, let's say the NBA, let's say it's the NBA, pays them hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And what the NBA does in turn is they make DraftKings the official sports betting partner of the league. And they give, now listen to this. So we all know that you're going to see DraftKings slapped all over the TV and all that. But the other thing they do is they give the gambling companies real-time stats, player tracking, and in-game updates. Why does that matter? Because live betting is the fastest growing gambling segment. So we've noticed this. You and I, Bets, we're watching an NBA game. It's one thing that they talk about the betting odds before the game. Right. But then you'll be in the second quarter and it will just flash the betting odds right there. And you're like, what are you doing? The game's already going. What that's in-game betting, right? If it happens during the game, we tend to think of betting happening before an event happens. But the fastest growing betting segment is in-game betting. And so what the gambling companies want is they want as much engagement and they want as much gambling as possible. The NBA and the professional sports leagues want as much engagement with their product as possible. And so they want you to gamble up one side and down the other during the game. Right. The NBA and the NFL and MLB are making tons of money off of this. They are also getting higher engagement from the fans, right? Right. Because
if you've got money on the line, you're going to be really
You're not going to turn the game off early. Right. You're going to be more invested. You're less likely to walk away and go do an errand or something.
You want to see if Wemby makes it to 25 points because you gambled that he would.
There you go.
Or whatever.
So the sports leagues love it because they are getting tons more money. The gambling companies love it because it enables them to make gambling much more attractive. They can now help you gamble every moment. And of course, the leagues aren't going to come out and publicly say, we just want to make more money. We're super greedy. So what they have said is, well, it's good that we partner because otherwise all of this would happen illegally on the black market. And so it's so good that it's out in the open now. Yeah. Now, I think that's a horrible argument.
And it's funny, if you watch DraftKings, for example, their commercials, they'll have, the tiny print at the bottom that says gambling problem, ?
Oh, yeah.
Call, 1-800, whatever. And it's like, but you just spent 30 seconds or a minute telling me why I should gamble, and then you have this tiny thing at the bottom.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure that Adam Silver, the director of the commissioner of the NBA, if he was on the podcast right now and he took truth serum, he would say, we felt like we didn't have a choice. We couldn't leave the money on the table. The owners said we have to make this money, whatever. The players want the money, all of it. But the train is really off the tracks.
Yeah. Okay. And
the leagues know, by the way, the leagues know the train's off the tracks.
The players don't need the money. Can I just say that? They make a lot of money.
Yeah, but here's the thing. The leagues have really put themselves in a horrible position because they're starting to see the integrity of the game affected. We've had players getting caught gambling. We've had MLB pitchers throwing wild pitches because they set a bet in the dugout. You're getting all kinds of crazy stuff happening. And the bottom line is the people that really know this, they'll never say it out loud, but the leagues are concerned about the integrity of the product. But the money's too much. the the train's left the station. It's too late. They're not going to pull it back now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's really crazy.
It
Now,
is crazy.
Bets, let me read you the most insane story ever about something called prediction markets.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the other thing about gambling. What we are doing now, what has happened to our society is we are commodifying everything.
Mm-hmm.
So people don't just want to gamble on sports, they want to gamble on everything. So when did you first hear about prediction markets? I'll tell you when I did in a second.
Probably within the last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you didn't know what it was, and then you heard about it.
Right.
The first time I heard about prediction markets was the lead up to the last presidential election. And I heard that some gambler in France had placed $100 million or something like that, Donald Trump would win.
Yeah, I did hear that. Not understand that.
And the crazy thing was polling, presidential polling is always subject to error and bias and all this stuff. So what I read people saying is, if you really want to know who's going to win the presidential election, check the prediction markets, because unlike polling, that's real money that's on the line. So I still remember, I think it was the night of the election, I was like, what is this? And I Googled it and I was like, Kalshi, what's Kalshi? And I go to Kalshi and they had predicted that Donald Trump would win the election.
Wow.
And there was, of course, millions and millions, maybe billions of dollars that had been bet on that. So that was my first ever exposure to prediction markets. But I have to read you the most crazy story, one of the craziest stories I've ever read. Here it is. Here's the title of the story. Gamblers vowing to kill journalist unless he changes Iran war report to help them win poly market bet. Okay, so just hang with me. This story is going to twist your brain because it's so nuts. So the two big prediction markets are poly market and Kalshi. So listen to this. And I'm just reading from this article. We'll link to the article. But this is the craziest story. An Israeli journalist said he's received death threats from gamblers demanding he change an accurate report about Iranian missile strikes in order to help the gamblers win a bet on the prediction market app Polymarket. Okay? Wow. So on Monday, I forget, this was just a few weeks ago. On Monday, Emmanuel Fabian, a military correspondent for the Times of Israel, wrote that he was confused when he suddenly received several requests to correct a report that he wrote on March 10th that an Iranian missile had struck Israeli territory. So this guy's just a reporter. He just writes, hey, a missile hit Israeli territory. Back to the article. Fabian said he'd based his report on information from rescue services as well as footage that emerged showing the massive explosion caused by the missile's warhead. No injuries were reported from the impact as the missile struck an empty area outside the city of Bet Shemesh near Jerusalem. And here's the quoting from Fabian. He says, "What I thought was a seemingly minor incident during the war has turned into days of harassment and death threats against me." Hours after posting the report to the paper's live blog, Fabian said he received an email from a user identifying as Aviv, claiming that what had hit the ground was not a missile, but an interceptor fragment. Why is someone going to email a journalist and say it wasn't a missile, it was an interceptor fragment? Fabian contended military sources had confirmed that it was a missile and the impact was far too large to have been from only an interceptor. He then received another email from a user named Daniel with the exact same gripe. Daniel described having an urgent request for the report to be changed and told Fabian that by changing it, you would be helping me, many others, and of course the state of Israel. So now he's getting these people want me to change my report. Daniel sent Fabian several more emails over the next couple of days demanding a correction, and the tone continued to grow more urgent. I ask again, he said, if you could handle this as soon as possible, it would help us a lot. This is really important. Please change it this morning. It continues. Other users messaged him with the same complaint over email in the messaging app Discord. It was only when Fabian received more angry replies from two more users on X that he realized what was going on. And he says, checking those X accounts, both appeared to be involved in gambling on the Polymarket betting site. As far as I now understand, the emails I received were intended to confirm whether or not a missile had hit Israel on March 10th, in order to resolve a prediction on Polymarket.
Wow.
So all of these people had bet money about whether or not a missile from Iran would hit Israel.
That's crazy.
Polymarket is a cryptocurrency prediction market where users buy and sell shares tied to real-world events. Fabian found that the people clamoring for his attention had put money on whether Iran would strike Israel on March 10th. This market will resolve to yes if Iran initiates a drone missile or airstrike on Israel's soil on the listed date in Israel's time. Otherwise, this market will resolve no, the website explained. However, it stipulates that intercepted missiles would not receive a yes verdict.
Wow.
As of March 16th, the gamblers had wagered more than $14 million on the event.
Oh my gosh.
Over the next several days, requests continued to roll in from people demanding a correction to the story.
That is
Now
crazy.
listen, by the weekend, the messages had become violent. Fabian said a user identified as Haim accosted him with several threatening messages in Hebrew over WhatsApp. You have exactly half an hour to correct your attempt at influence, the man wrote. Despite the fact that you've received countless inquiries, you insist on leaving it that way. If you do not correct this by 1 o'clock Israeli time today, March 15th, you are bringing upon yourself damage that you would never have imagined you would suffer, he said. Haim also attempted to call the journalist via WhatsApp multiple times before sending even more messages. And this is the final threat. He says, you have no idea how much you've put yourself at risk. Today is the most significant day of your career. You have two choices. Either believe that we have the capabilities and that after you make us lose 900,000, we will invest no less than that to finish you.
Wow.
So now people are threatening to kill him because the way he wrote a story did not give them the result that they wanted on their bets.
That's crazy.
People have bet about the following things, Bets. About whether or not Maduro would be removed from Venezuela. One person made $436,000 on betting the same day that Maduro would be removed. People, and I'm not making this up, there is a bet right now on whether Jesus will return before 2027. I think it's at 5%. 5% is the odds.
That's funny.
Now listen to this. This is how insane it's lower than 5%. It's like, I don't know, 1 or 2% or so. I haven't found it. Now listen to this. This is how crazy all of this is. There's another bet going on whether or not the odds will rise above 5% that Jesus will return.
That's funny.
People are going crazy. We are gambling on everything.
That's wild.
We are gambling, and the people that have gone down this path, it's gotten really crazy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I will say that there's a wonderful episode of a podcast called Pablo Torre Finds Out, where he has an interview with Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut, where Chris Murphy talks about legislation that he is introducing, trying to control some of this, but it seems like but he's beside himself.
Yeah.
As a senator. This thing is totally crazy. People are gambling on everything, and I don't know where this goes, but I will say this. We are commodifying everything as a culture.
Yep.
We are commodifying everything.
Yeah. I think that especially for those of us who have teenagers in the house or, young men or whatever it may be, it's just important to know how popular this is. Our kids know people who have already lost a good amount of money on sports gambling. Like, this is not a theoretical thing
have
for so many kids.
A kid who has a friend who's young and he's already lost a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this is real, and it's not just out there. It's hitting so many people. Yeah,
and I think this is a reminder. I mean, I am a capitalist. I love my country, but this idea that just allowing people to follow their worst impulses and that we should just legalize everything with no regulation or minimal regulation, I think is a very dangerous path for our country. There is some regulation around sports betting, but it's obviously not great. There is currently no regulation around prediction markets.
Yeah.
which is why people will gamble on whether or not there will be a famine in a country. I mean, there's really sick stuff that's out there, as well as crazy stuff like whether or not Jesus is going to return.
Yeah.
I just have to say, if Jesus returns, it doesn't matter if you won your bet.
You don't get your winnings.
That is the craziest thing.
That's really funny.
I do want to say, though, we as a culture, we cannot commoditize everything.
Right.
And I just want to say, as a lifelong sports fan, and you're a lifelong sports fan too, Bets. I mean, you've been cheering for football your whole life, basketball your whole life. I mean, we've become soccer fans. Go AC Milan. As a sports fan, are we not going to acknowledge that this is just sucking the soul out of sports?
Yes. Right.
That people used to care about their team.
Because, when you would hear about, game fixing before, you'd be like, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. But now you're like, well, could be.
Right?
Yeah.
You right? Uh-huh. Yeah. So some final thoughts. Again, we talk about parents a lot. You got to know what your kids are doing. Are they betting? Are they gambling? My opinion as a pastor, I would tell people, I don't think you should bet on sports at all. That's just my opinion. It's legal. So, you're not going to get arrested. I mean,
but there's a lot of things that are legal
exactly.
that aren't right.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Just because something's legal doesn't mean you should do it.
Exactly.
And I do want to say this. The vast majority of people who gamble most people don't become addicted. And most people don't lose insane amounts of money. So there's a lot of kind of hobby gamblers out there. They just like to put $10 on here. They like to do $20 here. They do the fantasy football league with their friends, and they have $100 buy-in or something like that. I would want to say, Christian, really? Are you sure that this is a good idea? I mean, you're kind of playing with fire. You don't know the path you're going to go down. You don't know if this is something that could become a problem in your life. And I just want to say for the NFL, which is more people gamble on the NFL than anything else, how many Christians are having their Sundays destroyed because of their gambling problems?
Yeah.
You bet $50 on the Bills, that didn't go your way. I'm guessing you're not too happy that night, even if you have a good paying job and everything. Yeah, I'm very concerned about this.
Yeah.
So we got to be aware of this. And I personally believe as a Christian that I do support legislation to highly regulate both sports gambling and prediction markets. And I want my voice to be heard on that because I don't think it's a good thing. I think it's ruining sports. I think it will kill us all. Go Denver Nuggets. That's our NBA team. And I'm not going to gamble on the Nuggets.
No.
Bets, do you have any other final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say again that, this is a market that seems to be very exploitative to bring profit to these giant companies, as you said. And I'm sure it's true, like you said, that some people can do it responsibly, but there are many who can't. And especially when you think about the engineering of a smartphone and all the dopamine, and then you add in the gambling on top of it, that is just like, especially for young brains, how can you prevent that going sideways?
Yeah, and even if you can do it responsibly and it's just kind of fun money for you and you lose a couple $100 a year, you could suck somebody else in, right? And it's really a guy, this is, so for what I can tell, it's mostly a guy problem with sports. But I've actually read stories about crazy female addict gamblers. So overall, it's not just a guy issue, but you have to think about others around you too.
True.
So that's the deal with sports gambling, with prediction markets. We hope that you'll keep enjoying sports, but do it in a way that honors God and honors your fellow neighbor. Thanks for joining us on Intersect. We'll see you next time.